Oh, by the way, let's see the bling. I can't remember if...
Oh, yeah.
How are you getting on with that, man?
I keep forgetting to wear it.
Yeah, I've been told off quite a few times. I'll take it off and just leave it lying places.
I just flat out forget to put it on in the morning, go to work, spend the entire day without it, and then at some point I'm like, fuck. And I just come home and put it on. I did that today, actually.
Do you not sleep with it?
No, I take it off.
Mine's like, I've had this resized, but I don't know how well you'll be able to see that, but like, that's far too big.
Yeah, it's far too
big. I don't think you should be able to do that. No. I could probably shake mine off.
Ah, so you don't want that.
I've just shaken off. No. Yeah, fine, that's good. Less of, I don't know, less of that.
Less of the Ali G.
The Ali G impressions.
No Ali G shit.
Ali G impressions.
Yeah.
Aye, that went fucking fleeing.
You'll share man's greatest thrill. And you tried and failed. You tried and died. You're dealing with the creme de la creme.
Hello and welcome to episode 26 of the Scratchcast, the occasional alternative music podcast. I'm Sneds, and as always I'm joined by the King of Ayrshire himself, Mr. Grant Patterson.
Hello.
And we're just two Scottish loons who love to talk about music. How have you been, Granty boy?
I've been very well, man. I've been very well. It's been a long time. Yeah. Like pushing a year. Like, is it not? Like,
no, I would say
not quite.
I'd say it's like 6 months.
Is the last? Yeah.
Well, I mean, if it's I think it's 6 months. I think June was when the last episode went up. We probably recorded it like a month before that, so it's probably it's at least 6 months. And like, we were gonna record this in June, I think, and then it was like, or maybe August, and then I wasn't very well, so we postponed it, and then it was your stag do, and then I had like 2 weddings, and then I got married, and then you got married, and then it was Christmas, and and here we are now.
It was the year of weddings. You went to about like 5 weddings or something. I don't think that's too much of an exaggeration, is it? Like, if you include your own.
Yeah, it was at least that, and then like the same amount of stag do's almost. Like, it was like the start of the year was just stag do after stag do, and then it was wedding after wedding after wedding. So, which is good, but it's also fucking exhausting. But
aye.
It's good.
Your fucking wallet would have taken a hammering as well.
Yeah, totally. I was like frantically doing bank switches to get free money from like. You could get free money for like transferring bank accounts. So I did that like 5 times over the course of the year, and like got like £150 each time. I was like using that to fund my extravagant lifestyle.
Jet set lifestyle. What was the best deal? Who was the best deal?
Oh, it's been that many I can't remember. I got 200 quid off. I got 200 quid off of one of the banks.
Fuck, that's quite good.
For basically doing fuck all. So that's a Scratchcast top tip. Who needs Martin Lewis?
Yeah. I got like 125 quid when I first joined with First Direct, but that was years ago. That's years ago.
I see.
And I think that's only open to like new members or like people that kind of join them for the first time.
It is. I've kind of exhausted my options. Like, once you've done them, you've got like a couple of years before you can do it again. So I'll have to just have no social life until I can start switching banks again.
Just have to lay low for a little while.
Aye.
You'll share man's greatest thrill. And you tried and failed. You tried and died. You're dealing with the creme de la creme.
Right. Let's see what we've got on this month's show. I say this month's, this
month.
year's show, I guess. This might be the only one, you never know.
Depending on what happens.
Exactly.
Who else is left to get married?
Well, I don't know. It must be running low. Right. So, because my notes are 6 months old, I decided to just skip all the gig stuff and all the digital corkboard stuff because it's so out of date. It's completely irrelevant. So we're just going to jump straight into the single swap, but I'll go through everything that's on the show this time round. So obviously on our single swap, we are discussing post-punk experiment number 3, A Bigger Splash by experimental indie weirdos, the wife guys of Reddit, and You Can Be Mean by American-Brazilian singer-songwriter Indigo de Souza. And our album reviews this month are Doggerland, the third album from Glasgow's musical wizard Rudy Zygadlo, the Black or White EP, the 18th record from Munich-based artist Kagri Vredemir, Standard Patter, the new album from Scottish rappers Fire Up the Sun, Restless Dreams, the new EP from Livingston's industrial electro-pop goths Gravel, and finally Nothing Clever, Just Feelings from Brighton-based electro-punks Clip Drip. Now, I used the word new quite a lot there, so just take that with a pinch of salt.
You'll share man's greatest thrill. And tried and failed and failed. They tried and died. You're dealing with the crap de la crap.
So anyway, right, let's go on to the single swap then. So, as always, on every episode, we each give the other a song to listen to for discussion on the next podcast. So on the last episode, I gave Grant the song Post-Punk Experiment number 3, A Bigger Splash by the Wife Guys of Reddit, and Grant gave me You Can Be Mean by Indigo de Souza. So, Grant, do you want to kick us off with the Wife Guys of Reddit?
Yeah, absolutely. So Snez just quite rightly said there, he gave me Post-Punk Experiment number 3, open bracket, A Bigger Splash, close the bracket, by the Wife Guys of Reddit. This was released almost a year ago on the 7th of April 2023. It's just over 2 minutes long. The band themselves are a Glasgow-based quartet consisting of Aaron, Neve, Elise and Angus, and are self-described purveyors of soupy rock. A wife guy, for those of you who are unaware, which I was myself, according to Wikipedia, is a man whose fame is solely owed to the content he posts about his wife. Famous wife guys include your favourite, Sneds, Adam Levine, and stand-up comic John Mulaney. And according to an article that I read in the New York Post, is a serious red flag, or was a serious red flag way back in 2022. I doubt very much whether this has got anything to do with the band, but there you go. The song itself opens with a kind of pulsating guitar riff, which is quickly followed and gets layered up with a kind of pretty standard drum beat. Then there's this kind of discordant and jagged stabs of kind of lead guitar. The vocals kick in around the kind of 20-second mark with the lyrics, I dropped that turd in the middle of the bowl. Then there's this kind of interesting kind of call and answer like section between the vocalist and the lead guitar, whereby the guitar almost mimics the melody of the vocals. The vocals are delivered in quite an interesting way, which I quite enjoyed. For my money, it almost felt kind of reminiscent of something you might see on a kind of Primus track. My Name Is Mud kind of springs to mind. The song gets kind of progressively more chaotic, fuzzed up, and there's a lot of kind of reverb in there. It feels as if it kind of reaches a peak about the kind of 1 minute 20-second mark. And there's a pretty cool punchy guitar riff around here at this time as well. But fortunately, it's pretty short-lived. In terms of my kind of overall rating of the song, like I felt as if it was alright, just an alright song. They've got quite a varied back catalogue though, and I wouldn't say this is like a complete departure from the type of thing that they've done in the past. Their EPs Wet and Tired from 2021 and The Wife Guys Walk Into Oncoming Traffic from 2022. There's kind of similar vibes in there. They're definitely kind of an alt-rock band, but I kind of get the impression that they kind of play around with a lot of kind of different musical styles. Listening to them, some of their lyrics, or the way they deliver their lyrics, reminded me a bit of a kind of less electro kind of chairlift. A few of the songs, the lyrics are quite muted. Let Me Play a Serious One felt like it could have been an Air song, for example, so kind of keeping with that kind of electro kind of pop vibe. But there's also kind of elements of kind of Decemberists in there, kind of country, kind of first aid kit type sounding songs. There's elements of kind of bossa nova type music in there, which, is really quite cool. Their first single, or one of the first singles that I kind of stumbled across, is called O Come Emmanuel. That was released in 2020. Has a proper Appalachian churchy feel to it, which I really liked, and that's a huge departure from post-punk experiment number 3. So I wasn't completely enamoured with this song, but I think they're definitely one to kind of watch out for, and it'd be interesting to see what they kind of come out with next.
Yeah. What rating would you give it for this song?
I gave it a 5.
Fair enough. I mean, I gave you this song because, well, I thought it was funny in a sort of puerile, kind of dumb sort of way, but I quite liked it as a sort of quirky punk song as well. And there's a sort of bizarre vocal delivery and wild musicianship that I thought was quite good. It's not like, in terms of like a sort of funny song that's also, like a catchy banger, it's not quite as good as like something like Bloodhound Gang's A Bad Touch, but that's kind of, I think, why I was drawn to it. Is it's just kind of a stupid song that's quite fun and catchy. Sounds a bit like Idols. There's a bit of weird stuff, maybe sort of black midi-ish kind of weirdness. A bit of that sort of jagged indie punk of the mid-noughties, like maybe the Rakes or the Rapture or something like that. And then, yeah, and it's not that long either, so it's, if you don't like it, it's over fairly quickly.
Yeah.
And then it's got like a video where, it's quite a cool video where the band just look really cool. Like, to begin with, at least, they just look really cool, just sort of bashing away at their instruments, and then they start like bathing in shit and like eating shit and like drinking shit water. So it's a pretty rank video, but it fits the song. But so if that sounds like your cup of tea, then go and watch that video. But
the video totally passed me by. I never actually thought to have a look at the video.
Yeah, it's just the way they look. They look like it's just a really cool band right at the start, and then they start just kind of wallowing around in shit. But yeah, I think it's like you say, they've got, just like all their other stuff just sounds very different. They seem to be quite an experimental band, so definitely one, like you say, to keep an eye on, and just thought they were worth talking about. You mentioned the EP from 2022, The Wife Guys Walk Into Oncoming Traffic, which is a pretty good EP, and there's a couple of good tracks, Pig Fat and Bacon Grease, which came out simultaneously after that EP, I think. So yeah, it's a decent song. I'd probably give it a 7 out of 10 because I quite like it. I think it's
quite like it.
I think it's dumb, but it's good. So there you go.
Fair enough.
Okay, so that was Post-Punk Experiment number 3, A Bigger Splash, by the Wife Guys of Reddit.
I dropped a stud in the middle of the bowl. He made a big splash, he made a big splash, he made a big splash, made a big splash, and it went all over my bum. I dropped a turn,
Okay, so Grant, you gave me the song You Can Be Mean by Indigo D'Souza, which came out on 5th of April 2023 on Saddle Creek Records, and it's about 2.5 minutes long. Indigo D'Souza is an American-Brazilian artist from North Carolina. Now, I had heard a few tracks, I think other singles from the album that this is from, before you gave me this, but I hadn't really gone in deep on anything. So it was nice to get a chance to do that with You Can Be Mean, which is the third single and the second track from Indigo D'Souza's third album, All of This Will End. And I love this.
Yeah.
It's old school but modern. It reminds me of bands we've covered before, like Pillow Queens. There's bits that are a bit like Violent Soho as well, if you remember them. It feels like kind of contemporary slacker rock, which is already going to be right up my street. But I really love the vocals here. They're poppy and catchy. There's a slightly kind of yelpy lilt in there that makes all the difference. I just think the pace of the song is satisfying as well. It sort of trundles along, barely breaking a sweat, but there's a nice distortion and jangle to the guitars, this dreamy drum beat, sort of wistful synth melodies, and even some cheerful whistling in there later on in the song. Mm-hmm. And when the guitarists are at their heaviest, that cheerful whistle comes in, and it's quite weird, but it comes after this dramatic chanted lyric, when will it ever get any better? When's it going to get any better? And it's sad, but it's also cathartic. The lyrics are like an open letter to an abusive partner, as far as I can tell, dissecting a toxic relationship, and they can be scathing with lines like, you can be a dick to me, it's what I'm used to. I can't believe I let you touch my body, or I'd like to think you've got a good heart and your dad was just an asshole growing up. So yeah, I think this is a great song. Can't remember if I listened to the whole album. I think I listened through some of it, and there was a track, Smog, which was a bit more of like a dancey kind of track. So I think the album be quite varied. But as far as You Can Be Mean goes, it's a 9 out of 10 for me. Brilliant song.
Aye. That's exactly what I gave it as well. So I was introduced to Indigo D'Souza, so wasn't overly familiar with her kind of previous work, but I would agree, like her vocals has, kind of smacks of, I've written down here, like Kimya Dawson from the Mouldy Peaches. There's elements of kind of Girl in Red. You kind of mentioned the kind of slight kind of pop elements. Can't quite remember how you described it there, Sneds, but I've kind of written here like the kind of twee DIY bedroom pop elements, and maybe kind of Frances Forever. Remember we covered her
absolutely.
A wee while ago. And yeah, I think the guitars, they do have that kind of, indie alt rock grunt to it. And there's definitely more of that on the album. I've listened to the album on a few occasions. There's some kind of properly kind of thrashy, metal sounding kind of skills and howls, chucked in there as well in some of the tracks. Some brilliantly kind of tender and melodic moments on the album too, such as in the final track, Younger and Dumber. So definitely worth checking out. If you like the single, you're gonna absolutely love the album. And yeah, I gave it a 9 out of 10 as well. So yeah, I think that's pretty good rating.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's almost the best rating, so it's
almost the best.
Good. Okay, so that was You Can Be Mean by Indigo D'Souza. Now, this is the point where I ask you what you have for me for the next episode, but I have to come clean and say I haven't got anything for you because I've forgotten to put anything in here. I've just highlighted.
That's okay.
I've highlighted the bit from last time in yellow, and then haven't changed it. So I'll have to frantically find something. But if you got something for me, then or do you?
I do. It's not, in keeping with the rest of the episode, it's not a kind of late. It's not a new single. It is a newer single than the one that I kind of initially had kind of written down for us. So it's by a band called the Kidney Flowers. So I was initially going to give you their single Mutiny. Can't remember when that was released, but in the early part of kind of last year. The single I want you to kind of listen to this time round. It's called Stand Up or Sit Down. So it was released on the 15th of September, so just kind of towards the end of last year. And it's a single from their debut album, Burn Your Furniture, which was released on Never Found Records later that month. I think it was released maybe on the kind of 25th of September. They had an album launch at the Old Hairdressers in Glasgow, so across from Stereo. The band themselves are a Glasgow-based garage punk band who have earned themselves a reputation as being one of the best must-see live acts on the live music scene. The band themselves comprises of Grant Canyon on guitar and lead vocals, Abigail A on drums, and Tog Miller on bass. So obviously a bit of an older single, but it was just an excuse to kind of showcase them and kind of talk a wee bit more about them. I've still to kind of sit down and properly listen to their album, but if Stand Up or Sit Down and Mutiny is anything to go by, it'll be an absolute banger.
Good stuff. So that's the Kidney Flowers, Stand Up or Sit Down?
Kidney Flowers.
Yeah, Kidney Flowers.
Oh, sorry, I thought you said Forest. Kidney Forest.
No, that's it. Right. I am going to give you...
You're going to give me something.
And I have to admit, I haven't listened to this song yet, so the jury will be out. I'm going to give you a song, I believe it's a cover.
Okay.
It's called 10 Mile Smile, and it's by a fella called Jay Tollier. I think that's how you pronounce his name. I could be completely wide of the mark there. But he is I believe he's the front man of a band called The Acrylics. Now, they are a band from Elgin, and the reason I've picked this is because my niece sent me the link to it.
Oh, nice.
And admittedly, I haven't listened to it yet, so I don't know whether it's any good or not, but I feel like it's worth talking about, given that they're
Elgin.
He's Elgin, exactly.
Yeah,
so
Elgin. Quite a cool name though, isn't it? Like a cool band name, The Acrylics.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's listen to that song. What did I say? 10 Mile Smile.
10 Mile Smile by Jay Tollier.
So it's Taulier. So you spell that. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. But and I believe that's a cover, but I don't really know the original either. That's maybe me showing my age.
I don't know. It does sound familiar, but I don't know if it's just because it rhymes. You know what I mean?
Totally. So, yeah, so that's a single. It's probably worth having a listen to a couple of Acrylics tracks as well, just out of interest. But there you go. That's my frantic... my frantic pick, because I forgot to put
I think it's your turn, Sneds. I'm pretty sure I've done that to you before, or I've definitely missed out whole albums in the past. It's been like, nah, I haven't looked at that.
No, didn't listen to it. Cool. Okay, so that was Stand Up or Sit Down by the Kidney Flowers and 10 Mile Smile by Jay Tollier.
You'll share man's greatest thrill. They tried and failed and failed. They tried and died. You're dealing with the creme de la creme.
Cool. Right. Okay. On to the album reviews then. So if you're listening and you have something you'd like us to hear, you can send it over to us at theheadscratcher@outlook.com or direct message us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. Now, we'll do these in order of release. So the first album we've got here is Doggerland by Rudy Zygadlo, which came out on the 30th of June 2023. Do you want to take this one, Grant?
Yeah, I probably can't pronounce his the second name there, so I'm just going to refer to him as Rudy.
Okay.
So as you said, it was released on the 30th of June on his own record label, I believe, RZ. It contains 14 songs and is approximately 43 minutes and 17 seconds long. He is a self-described multi-instrumentalist, producer and mystic tour guide. This is his third studio album to date, which he has described as a bubble of hope in a sea of doom, saluting the oncoming tides with big hooks and a wry sense of humour, drawing on reference points that span Greek mythology, Aldous Huxley, Stevie Smith's poems, and the everyday bathos of modern urban life. I don't know all that much of his kind of back catalogue. I did have a kind of brief look over it. I do feel as if this is kind of slightly different. The songs that I listened to did have a bit of a kind of electro kind of feel to it, kind of reminiscent of PNAU, Empire of the Sun, Passion Pit type of feel to it. But with this track, you know what I mean? Not that I dislike that stuff, but with this album, you know, I immediately kind of fell in love with it. I've kind of written down here that I think it's fun, funky, and full of unbridled genius, reminiscent of Frank Zappa in terms of its depth, breadth, innovativeness, and imagination. Yeah, I absolutely adored this album. Immediately kind of struck by how he looks as well, which I thought was quite interesting. That kind of like bobbed haircut and like drawn on moustache, which I think, I don't know where that comes from, because, you know, for my money it was kind of reminiscent of Foxy Shazam's Eric Nally. Do you know who I'm talking about? He featured on trying to remember the name of the guy now. He was like a kind of guest vocalist on the guy that sang Thrift Store. What song I'm on about? Doesn't matter. He's got that kind of same moustache and same kind of hairdo, and I wonder if it's like, I don't know if it's derived from something else. I really don't know. Doesn't matter. But yeah, absolutely loved this album. The first two opening tracks, Thriving, Not Diving, and Somewhere in Glasgow, are an absolute delight to listen to. Somewhere in Glasgow in particular is full of little interesting hooks and nuances, from the way he uses his voice, which for my money at times sounded kind of reminiscent of Modest Mouse's vocalist Isaac Brock. And I think it's, you know, the way he kind of pronounces certain words, or puts interesting inflections onto kind of place names like Finiston or Maryhill. I remember having this conversation with you on my stag do, like in Siberia. We were fucking smoking a fag or whatever, talking about it. And, you know, like in this song in particular, there's a kind of like theremin-esque electronic which he uses to kind of, which I've written here, kind of is used to kind of catch the very essence of, you know, he describes swallows in the garden. That's a kind of lyric within the song, and then that's followed up by these, I think it is the use of a kind of theremin or an electronic whatever, and it just sounds almost like onomatopoeic, like almost like reminiscent of two swallows kind of like just diving about in the garden.
It reminded me of a bit of the Eels song, My Beloved Monster, you know, from Shrek. Yeah. Just that sort of weird, it's kind of balloon animals or something that comes in the film, but it's, yeah, I know what you mean. It's like, it's almost like a guitar that sounds like a theremin or something like that. You know, it's
maybe
it's
a weird slide guitar or something.
Yeah, Somewhere in Glasgow, it's a fucking anthem. I mean, like that chorus, you know, where he sings Somewhere in Glasgow, like that should be a fucking anthem for Glasgow. It's just like, you know, everybody. You know, it's one of those songs people just need to hear, I think. So catchy. And I had a little bit of background with Rudy Zygadlo in that I reviewed his Chattanooga EP, which came out a couple of years ago. And other than that, I haven't heard anything more, but the Chattanooga EP, 4 of the songs from that are on this album. So it's nice to get a chance to talk about some of those tracks again. But so those 4 tracks were Chattanooga, obviously the title track from that EP, Transport, Sellotape, and Athens, Love Boat. So those were the songs that I'd already heard just from reviewing that EP. I hadn't really dug back into his back catalogue or anything before that. So and the Chattanooga EP, you know, it's, you know, there's 4 songs of it on here, so it's quite similar to the sort of thing that's on this album. So it's kind of more of what I was expecting from Rudy Zygadlo, really. Really good opening track, Thriving Not Driving, reminded me sort of that, remember the Voids album that I made you and the Waco Boys listen to? It's got kind of that weirdo electro-pop kind of, it's like a mixture of electro-pop and classic rock, and it's just sort of a weird collection of noises that all work together. I think there's a bit of the Voids album in particular anyway, throughout the rest of the album as well. Somewhere in Glasgow we've talked about, but you know, it's got just weird catchy electronics, distorted riffs, clanging, bending, picking, slick little guitar licks. Sounds like the Eels, but also sounds like Queen. You know, I think there's bits of Queen here and there, and that sort of classic rock elsewhere on the album.
Yeah.
The third track is A Bridge of Sighs, is just, I mean, it's just a interlude really, but it's just a quick bit of poetry, a bit of performance art that leads into the next track. I don't pretend to understand what he's going on about. He talks about holding a palace in one hand, a prison in the other, and they ask for some soap and some hemlock. I mean, this is...
And take me to the stage, isn't it? Is that what he says?
Possibly. So, I mean, I think there's a lot in here that I do not understand. I
like that.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
I like that. I wonder if, like, I suppose the look, it's not a case of wondering, like, it will be a kind of performance piece, you know, that look, that persona that he kind of takes on is kind of part of a kind of performance piece. Yeah, as you said, kind of Bridge of Sighs, kind of short pieces, kind of spoken word poetry, the kind of soundscape that accompanies it kind of felt reminiscent of kind of Patrick Pearson's soundscapes off the LYR Calling the Crash Team album. So yeah, that was right in the street. It is very short though, but then that acts as a bit of a kind of segue into Helmet On, which, in keeping with what you were kind of saying, you were kind of saying that, you know, there's elements of kind of classic rock in there. I thought, like, this song, the vocals in this song in particular, almost had a kind of Bowie-esque kind of feel to it, particularly that kind of vocal refrain of Wella, 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 which is, he kind of sings it, you know, at one point in the song. Not sure if it's intentional, but there was a bit where he's singing I can make you, and it's talking about almost having this kind of magic helmet. It's about kind of I can't see you, or you can disappear when I put this helmet on. And when he repeats that I can make it, for me, it kind of ties back into what I was kind of saying earlier on about how he uses his voice. His voice is very much, you know, part of the instrumentation in a lot of these songs, and for me that almost sounds like he was kind of saying alchemy, which I don't know if is in kind of keeping with, you know, this idea of kind of magic and all the rest of it. I know that probably sounds a bit silly, but that's how it kind of came across to me.
Yeah, the guitar riff on that is like super 80s, like in a really good way, like really chunky. And I thought some of the vocals sound a bit like Rick Astley.
Okay.
Like in that sort of 80s kind of poppy kind of way. I thought there were bits that sounded kind of like MGMT as well.
Yeah.
And just like a really nice, like kind of awkward guitar solo in the middle of the song that sounds like it could be improvised. But yeah, it's a really interesting song, and that 80s guitar riff is just brilliant.
There's other songs where he kind of takes on a bit of like an old man crooning type voice. I think it's on Is It Come On Through? It's like, come on through, dear boy, dear boy.
Well, I think that's one where I mentioned David Bowie, as I said. Yeah, I thought he had these sort of commanding vocals that sounded a bit like David Bowie, occasionally like Nick Cave, that kind of deeper commanding voice that Nick Cave has.
It's funny you mention Nick Cave, because there's a couple of tracks towards the end of the album where I've been like, yeah, that sounds pretty similar to Nick Cave, kind of, for my money, kind of reminiscent of like the Ghosteen album that we covered before, which obviously loved. Mentioned Sellotape here as well, so I think it was one of the singles that was kind of released from the album. The opening bars reminded me a bit of a kind of Smashing Pumpkins song, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I think it was either kind of Avador or something off the kind of Melancholy and Infinite Sadness album. It's another absolute banger, you know, kind of full of kind of shredding guitar, weird kind of electronics, but weird bit of kind of interesting electronics, and a lot of kind of tongue-in-cheek humour, which is kind of peppered throughout the course of the album. So yeah, I think all the tracks are fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, we jumped over a couple of tracks there that are, I mean, they're all worth mentioning. I mean, Transport, that's the first one that we hear from the Chattanooga EP. And I've said, it sounds a bit like something a late 90s boy band would have done. Like, I've written there's bits of the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, and then, like, some of the vocals sound a bit like Justin Timberlake. And I think bits of it sound like a Payphone by Maroon 5 as well. Which just made me laugh because, I don't know, Maroon 5 makes me laugh nowadays for some reason.
Yeah, but I mean, I suppose that's again kind of back to what we were kind of saying about the kind of innovativeness and the breadth of this. So, like, on one hand, we were kind of talking about how, you know, his vocals sound a bit like Nick Cave, you know, it sounds a bit like, you know, David Bowie, and then you're mentioning kind of 90s boy bands, you know?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I'm throwing in Justin Timberlake, Rick Astley, like, you know, just all sorts. There's obviously another interlude track 8, which is This Is Doggerland, which is really memorable, even though it's an interlude. It's almost like a game show the way it's set up for me. It's like there's like the intro to the game show, which has got the sort of This Is Doggerland fanfare before the host comes on and sort of explains what point we've got to in the album. He's like, all right, I think we're halfway through this ripping yarn, and it's the way he rolls the R. I'm not going to attempt to roll it like he does, but
you're right, because you could almost imagine it like appearing on the screen when he kind of mentions all these things, can't you?
Yeah, because he mentions a list of stuff which include megafauna, VR escapism, dating apps, train crashes, ginger nuts, and Fred Astaire. And then he lists a few more things, and then, like you say, there's this sound that's almost like, you know, a question is being lit up on the board in a game
like
show,
Family Fortunes or something.
Yeah, exactly. I just like the staging of it, and the, you know, the fact that it's funny as well. Just that sort of flamboyant way it's delivered.
Yeah. Wonder if there's something to do with, like, if there's a connection between Doggerland and megafauna. Because do you know what Doggerland is, or what it was? It was the land bridge that connected Britain with the rest of Europe, I think.
Oh, okay.
Who knows? Probably just went straight over my head.
Well, I think it's stuff like that. Is like, I'm just like, fuck, I really don't know anything. It's like, you start mentioning things like this, like, I genuinely know nothing. I just enjoy this album a lot, regardless of I understand what he's on about or not. And, you know, there's a lot going on over 14 tracks. The song I really wanted to talk about was Chattanooga, which is the title track from the EP, which when I first heard that EP, I absolutely rinsed that song to death, and I just love it. The rhythm of the guitars, the vocals are great. There's this sort of effortless slacker vibe. There's bits of Prince and Depeche Mode in it, but it's the Sean Connery impression that makes it for me every time, where he's just like, he's exactly. He sings a Chattanooga, a Steely Dandy, and there's something about that. It's just pure dopamine. I don't know. Every time I just listen out in anticipation for it. I absolutely love that song.
I think one of my favourite tracks from the album, and this is kind of back to what I was saying about kind of Nick Cave and Ghosteen album, was the last track in the album, Under the Water Mother. I just thought it was probably one of the most kind of emotive numbers of the collection. Fell in love with that kind of gang vocal refrain of Give Us a Revelation. I just absolutely loved it. I've rinsed that one big time.
Yeah. You know what that reminded me of, that song?
What?
Futurama. So there's an episode of Futurama where Fry makes a deal with the devil, and he gets the devil's like robot hands, so he can learn to play
violin.
No, it's a futuristic thing called, is it the holophone? And basically he does it to try and impress Leela. He becomes the like greatest holophone player that's ever lived, and then he has to give his real hands back. He has to get his real hands back to save Leela's life, or no, to stop her from marrying the devil or some shit like that. And it's just like the end of that, where Fry's got his old hands back and he's shit at the holophone, but it's like really emotional because of everything that's happened before it. Futurama's a weird show in that it can be extremely emotional, like, even though it's a comedy show, it has some storylines that are really like heart-wrenching, and that song reminded me of that. Through the middle part of the song anyway, it's got that sort of distorted melody.
Yeah, there's a cracking guitar solo on as well, just this kind of big swelling guitar solo that's pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, this is a good song, and yeah, it starts off a bit like Unchained Melody, but then kind of goes on to do its own kind of thing. So yeah, I suppose that's a way of describing the albums. There's lots of kind of familiarities that then sort of go off in really quite surprising ways.
Aye, there is. We've mentioned a few, obviously Nick Cave, David Bowie. I've mentioned,
Can't forget NSYNC, kind of bit of alt rock in there. I can mention kind of Modest Mouse. So as well as kind of drawing on a lot of different kind of themes and what have you, obviously drawn from quite a number of kind of influences, and it really is, a pretty amazing album, to be honest. This is the album that I came back to the most, and have done since we first started kind of talking about doing this podcast, doing this episode. Cool. Okay. Well, I'll give you my score then. So I've given it a 9 out of 10. I think it's really solid. There's a few songs, or maybe just one or two songs, where I'm not quite as taken with them, but overall I think it's superb.
I give it a 10 out of 10. And I would agree. I would have to agree. I know, like, when we're kind of talking about our ratings, it should be kind of flawless. I think that's a definition for giving somebody a 10 out of 10.
I think it's nearly or almost flawless. So it's not. So it doesn't have to be like absolutely perfect to get a 10, which sounds stupid, but I think that's.
I know what you mean. I think like there are a couple of tracks maybe aren't as good as the others, but I think the songs that are good are so good it kind of makes up for that, if that makes sense. So yes, a 10 out of 10 for me.
Nice. Okay. Well, it's going to go into the Hall of Fame.
Bam.
Which still don't have a buzzer or any kind of fanfare for that.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Nothing. So that all you get is a thumbs up.
2 thumbs up.
Great. Okay. So that was Doggerland by Rudy Zygadlo.
Chattanooga, a Steely Dandy.
Okay, so the next one we've got here is the Black or White EP by Kagri Radomir. I hope that's how you pronounce it. And that came out on the 7th of April, 2023. It's a self-released EP.
Yeah.
4 tracks, approximately 15 minutes long. So Kagri Radomir is an independent musician and music producer who currently lives in Munich. As far as I know, he's not from Germany originally, but I couldn't find any info to say where he actually is from, unless you could find anything, Grant.
No.
He didn't give us any information on that in the submission he sent. But Kagri does everything here. He writes and performs all the lyrics. He arranges and produces everything. Plays all the instruments, except for some additional trumpet and a thing called a jumbush, which is a Turkish instrument, a bit like a mandolin. And the main way that I decided I was going to describe this is that it's what if System of a Down were a semi-acoustic folk band.
Yeah, that's a good way. That's a good way to describe them. Before we came on, I was like, yeah, because obviously I had to like go back and listen to everybody. And to be fair, this EP and the Rudy one were the two that I kind of stood out for me the most. And I remember thinking at the time, yeah, like I'll have to remember to write down the kind of lead singer from System of a Down, like find out his name. So I've written it down here in preparation for kind of talking about him. I'm not going to pronounce it. Serge Tankian.
Serge Tankian, yeah.
Tankian, yeah. Yeah, so as you said, you know, I couldn't find all that much information on him. Born in 1981, interest started when he first picked up a guitar at the age of 13. He's been in numerous bands, however now solely concentrates on his own music and started doing his own music production as of 2010. To date, he's released a impressive 12 albums and 6 EPs.
What? Ah, well, okay. It's because I said somewhere it was like his 18th release or something, so that makes sense if it's a 12 albums and 6 EPs. That checks out.
Yeah. The EP kind of opens with Canary in a Coal Mine, opens with a kind of stripped back guitar, kind of grunting and echoey, kind of reverbing bass, which is closely followed by Cagri's vocals, which are gritty, raw, and I've kind of described them as kind of slightly unnerving. I've kind of described here, I've written down here rather, that his vocals have an almost like chant-like quality, which gives the song a kind of tinge of, again, what I've kind of described as kind of Eastern mysticism and flavour, which is something that's kind of continued throughout the entirety of the tracks.
Yeah, there's definitely a sort of dark, foreboding nature to that opening song. Vocals and harmonies reminded me a lot of System of a Down. And there's that a sort of thudding, palm-muted bass, and some hand drumming and some sort of weird sci-fi sound effects here and there. And yeah, a really cool opener. And I think there's just this kind of dirty and deranged nature to a lot of the instrumentals, which is what really... I mean, those vocals as well, they remind a lot of Serge Tankian, but that kind of dirty and deranged nature to the instrumentals, there's a bit of a System vibe to that as well. It doesn't really sound like System of a Down. There's just kind of those elements.
There's elements of it, isn't there?
Yeah, that are reminiscent of that band, which is pretty cool. Thinking about it now, it's probably that sort of acoustic kind of almost heavy nature, but with acoustic instruments. It was a bit like that Scratch album that we listened to.
Yeah.
Some of the songs from that album. Just thinking about it now, but I mentioned that there were sort of trumpets. So on track 2, The Undeniable Manifestation, there are these smoky trumpets that come in, sort of adding a bit of film noir and sort of occasional bombast to the dark acoustics, and those creaking vocals. And yeah, the final third of that song's got this really good bluesy, jazzy trumpet solo.
Aye. So the second track, as you said, kind of Undeniable Manifestation. So you're right, it kind of opens with that kind of haunting, mournful trumpet, which reminded me of the opening track of... I can't remember the name of it now, that's awful. Picaresque, the Decemberist album, which is Infanta, and it opens with a kind of similar sounding trumpet, like it's almost identical. So I was like, there's something about that it reminds me of something, like it's almost like a trope that's kind of used within music and soundtracks and stuff like that. So I did a kind of wee bit of kind of research into it, and I've written here, and this could just be total nonsense, but I've written, might be an example of taxim, a melodic musical instrumental improvisation that usually precedes the performance of a traditional Middle Eastern Turkish musical composition. Don't know, it's weird because like in Fanta, that December song, it's got a very similar sounding trumpet, and then like the music kind of kicks in. Don't know if I'm just kind of looking for a connection there, but yeah, the track gets much heavier after that, and that's a kind of quite an interesting kind of juxtaposition that's kind of used within the track.
Yeah. Well, maybe Kagri Raidmir is Turkish, because you've got that zumbush. That is, a traditional Turkish instrument, albeit he doesn't play it, but maybe there's a link there. So, segueing from me talking about the zumbush, we've got that on track 3, False Certainty. There's a bit of a Hotel California thing going on this song here and there. This really memorable zumbush solo. in the middle of the song, and it sort of becomes electrified and distorted. Or perhaps it's, maybe it changes into an electric guitar solo. It's really cool. And underneath all of that, you've got this bass line that starts to take on a sound akin to Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds, particularly a song called Horsell Common and the Heat Ray, which is in part of the story where you've got this object has crash landed in the middle of Horsell Common, I suppose, and it slowly starts to open, and something comes out and starts to just absolutely massacre everything in its path. And it's that bass line, that slow build bass line of that song. It's so good.
What a fucking soundtrack, by the way.
Yeah. When it starts going a bit disco is where I start to get a bit
tune out.
I do love Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds, but those disco bits, I know that's the era it came out of, but it kind of ruins it a little bit for me, which is maybe sacrilege to say, but yeah. So that bass line, yeah, absolutely brilliant.
Justifiable Hands to Play, that's the fourth and final song on the EP, and I've kind of described as probably the kind of brightest song on the album. Kind of opens with a kind of bright, bold acoustic guitar sound, gently kind of layers up with some swooning lead electric guitar flourishes, and then there's is it the Umbush?
I think it's
Jumbush.
Like I say, I have no idea if that's really how you pronounce it.
So we've got elements of that as well, and something I've kind of mentioned throughout the course of my notes is like the percussion. Actually, all the instrumentation in this album or this EP is really, really tight. Like, it's kind of expertly put together.
Everything sounds great.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it. Yeah,
I think for people anyone who's into rock, metal, grunge, and prog, and you like sort of the weirder sides of those, then I think you should get a lot out of it. So what about scores then? What have you given this?
So it took me a while to warm to it, but as I said, like this EP and Rudy's Doggerland were the two standout ones. So it did kind of grow on me. So I've given it a 7 or 8 out of 10.
I've given it an 8. And to be fair, this is actually a pretty immediate one for me, to be honest. I think that's just because I quite like kind of weird shit. But yeah, definitely an 8 out of 10. It's worth noting that since we planned to review this, Calgary Rademir has released another EP in October. So he released another EP called Absence, which came out in October, and I've had a quick listen to it. It's very the sort of same sort of idea as this. So if you like the Black or White EP, then definitely give Absence a look as well. Okay, so that was the Black or White EP by Calgary Rademir.
Before education spills over, even traumatizing cases after.
Right, next up is Standard Patter, the album from Fire Up the Sun. So they are a Scottish hip-hop duo, and this was sent to me by Kyle from Valdo way back in May. So that's when it first came out, towards the end of May last year on Graceland Records. So yeah, I'm keen to finally get a chance to talk about this, because I've been listening to it for absolutely ages. So throughout the album, you've got Scotland's own MC Burnout on the bars and Swedish producer RC on the beats. And you've got guests Luca and MC Bongo who appear in a few tracks as well. I didn't know anything about any of these artists going into the album, but the opening track immediately put a smile on your face.
Yeah.
On my face, I should say. It's called Dinna Give Up Your Day Job. And it just starts off as a phone call between two pals. Basically, it's RC telling MC Burnout to sack off his work and listen to the beat he's just finished. Burnout agrees, and upon hearing the beats, which sound like they're played on a kid's Casio keyboard,
Totally.
he's like, "What the fuck is this? Is this the beat?" And in a sort of derogatory fashion, but he decides to roll with it and lays down some bars, declaring that he's like Michael Douglas in the film Falling Down, making his way through the chaos of the tune. It's totally class. But at the end, RC is like, "Was that the bars? That was the bars you were telling me about all week? You should have just went to work." So immediately, just full of humour, and actually, the beats sound shitty and the bars sound kind of shitty, but they're actually really, really good, and really catchy. So yeah, a really, really cool opener.
You forgot to mention the lyric, "I'll see you in fucking leaving. I've got shit to do. You better be believing." I was like, that's fucking class. and there's elements of that all throughout the album. Like,
yeah, totally. And then like, so you got that first track, and then the next track, "Fire Up the Sun," which is the duo's namesake.
yeah,
The fidelity of the beats just skyrockets. Sounds really bright, sunny, polished. The bars are just as measured. Some great lines in there, like, "You can't ever see around this problem. If you're through on the keeper, make sure you lob him." And the simplest song is sung the loudest, "Standing with a hard on and feeling the proudest." And yeah.
I don't know if you noticed this. Like, I only noticed this today when I was kind of listening to it. So, you know, it's MC Burnout's vocals are kind of accompanied with this kind of stuttering and kind of whirling electronics. But I think it's, how would you describe this? Like, there's the electronics are, it's like kind of sung "Fire Up the Sun." Do you know what I mean by that?
No.
So it's like I think it's like almost like computerized vocals of someone singing
right.
"Fire Up the Sun."
Right, okay, I see.
And FIREUPTH sun. Because I just noticed it at the very end. I was like, because just at the very end, you hear them saying "Fire Up the Sun." Like, the electronics just conclude with "Fire Up the Sun," and I went back and listened to it a couple of times. I was like, yeah, I think they've just like almost recorded that, and I don't know, they've obviously done something pretty smart with it, and that's what serves as the kind of the instrumentation, or, you know, the beats or whatever. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I mean,
Don't know if I explained that well enough.
Well, no, I totally know what you mean. It's like,
Right.
it's a melody's been created using vocals. It's been
Aye.
sort of modified somehow. But I mean, from those first two tracks, there's already like loads of variety in there straight away, and then it just kind of it continues that theme. I suppose the constant is the MC Burnout's delivery remains fairly constant, but the beats really change throughout the album. I mean, the third track, "Burnt to the Ground," that's the first of two tracks that have got Luca on them, and that's got like it opens with like an aching acoustic melody, like played on acoustic guitar. The boy Luca that comes in sounds a bit like Mick Jagger, like singing over the top of Blur's "Girls and Boys." It's quite weird, but I think it's really good.
Aye. Yeah. Aye. I've kind of written here, it opens with a kind of melancholic guitar slowly accompanied by swelling ethereal electronic sounds and strings. Has a brilliant lyric, "Never be accused of having small testicles," which that was brilliant. Yeah, and you said it features Luca features a number of tracks. Couldn't find that much information on him other than he's born in a squat in Brixton. At the age of 19, he was living in a squat. His influences, so this is in, I think, it must be his own website. His influences range from Class A drugs to expensive drugs. The Clash, The Streets, Ian Dury, Tom Waits, and whoever's making decent music. He also sings in a kind of broad English accent. So again, you've got that juxtaposition of kind of MC Burnout's vocals and Luca's vocals, and it has a proper like 90s vibe to it.
I think that's where I'm coming from with Blur's Girls and Boys, to be fair.
Aye. And I suppose it's similar to the stuff that Voldo have done in the past as well.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. There's a lot of good songs here. The next track, recently published, Corrections, it's got a really cool opening, sort of chugging guitars, a really punky drum beat, and then it brings in synths and like a weird sort of dancey bounce to it, and it's really unexpected when that comes in, but by the time it comes back around again, it just sounds like it should be there, and you're just hooked in. And there's the line, "Are you listening? Because you fucking should be." And there's other great lines in that song, talking about a guy coming back from the grave with 2 bullets in his head and 1 in the spine, and about regretting not putting a bet on for Leicester to win the Premier League. Just really interesting lyrics on absolutely every song.
I really enjoyed We'll Do It Our Way, which features MC Bongo. I really enjoyed how each of the singers are kind of introduced, like it's almost like a ring announcer announcing their introduction. Really enjoyed MC Bongo on this number. For me, it's his kind of vocal delivery. I don't know if it's how he can accentuates the syllables of each word, but it kind of reminded me a bit like Kneecap.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I like. I've written down 2 lines that I like from this song. 3 baldy white cunts trying to be rappers, and march to the beat of rain fucking drum. It's avant-garde jazz, which means fuck every cunt. It's just that's the best line ever.
What did you think of No One Gives a Fuck Part 3?
Well, I don't know about Part 1 and 2. I've not listened to them. I didn't actually check to see if they existed, but I presume they do. But it's a great song, absolutely great song.
It's amazing, isn't it?
The melody behind it reminds me a bit of Wu-Tang's Gravel Pit, but performed by like the Chemical Brothers or the Prodigy.
It's got like almost like weird staccato type electronics, doesn't it?
It's quite. It's got that sort of anarchic edge of like the Prodigy in the electronics, and then you've got a bit of sort of whimsical whistling, and then you've got the sort of iconic "No one gives a fuck" line, which you can just imagine groups of people just absolutely bouncing to in a sweaty nightclub.
Aye, and it's basically just a list of things that pissed them off.
Yeah, it's an absolutely great tune.
Oh, aye. It's just brilliant. Star Wars, get it in the bin. Ouija folk who think they're Gallus. Rishi Sunak needs a hiding. I don't think that's like the full lyrics, but it's just ones that I've kind of picked out that I think are really good.
Yeah, it's just that that kind of just wild bounce of that "No one gives a fuck" line. It's just so catchy. But yeah, no, I've really enjoyed this album throughout. The next track, Life Logistics, is a song that I enjoy, but I'm also infuriated by it because it's got this really familiar melody in it, and I just can't figure out what it is.
Aye, I couldn't make it out either. You've got those kind of the kids' vocals, which accompanied by like organ-esque music. Aye, it's almost kind of reminiscent of like a kind of nursery rhyme or something like that, isn't it?
Yeah, and I thought it was like a sort of, like a classic punk song, like Bad Reputation by Joe and Jet and the Blackhearts, but it's not that because I checked that, and then I thought, maybe it's like Generator by the Holloways, but it's not that either. And it was just really winding me up Like, I just can't. It's like right in the back of my mind. I've heard this somewhere before, and I just can't pull it out.
Yeah.
But it's a really good melody, really, really good song. But every time I hear it, I'm like, what the fuck is that? What the fuck is that melody? I can't figure it out. But yeah, there's some more sort of moody stuff on the next track. You've had your consent manufactured. It's the lyrics seem to be about the metaphorical death of a hero, someone who's kind of forgotten their past principles and fallen from grace. It's a pretty grim track, but it kind of draws you in.
Aye, I felt as if you've had your consent manufactured and party for your right to party. I kind of felt like those were two commentaries on like COVID or like the fallout from COVID. Yeah, like Party for Your Right to Party is kind of one of the singles that were released from the album. It's a kind of proper foot stomper with a kind of 60s feel and swing to it. Like it felt kind of reminiscent of like Donovan or like Bob Dylan, early Bob Dylan. It's got like a harmonica chucked in there, but it's got a proper kind of, maybe a bit more of a kind of raucous kind of pub vibe to it.
Yeah, I was thinking like Bob Dylan gone electric, and then but also a bit like The View.
Aye,
like something a bit more I was going to say contemporary, but The View are they're like 2 decades old at this point, aren't they? So it's not that contemporary, but yeah, just that kind of like stomp that you were talking about reminded me of the View a bit.
Mm-hmm. And then like the last song, Last Orders, that's another song that features Luca. Again, that has like another kind of 90s feel to it, which is, I've kind of described here as a fun song about the apocalypse. Kind of discusses climate change, Putin. There's a big sing-along chorus to it. I really enjoyed the bit where they're kind of ordering drinks. I found that quite funny. And I think it must be MC Burnett goes up and is like, I'll have a whiskey with Annihilation, mate. I'll have a double Jack Daniels with Destruction. No, I'll have a pint of Guinness to finish off the world, I think. Yeah. So, aye, quite enjoyed that as well. And again, that's kind of further, I think there is quite a lot of kind of like political commentary and stuff like that throughout the course of the album. Certainly enough, you've had your consent manufactured. I was trying to kind of work out who that was about earlier on today, and I'm not smart enough to figure it out.
I've said this a few times, there's just great lyrics all over this album that you'll be picking things out, picking new things out every time you listen to it. So yeah, Last Orders, that is a brilliant way to end the album. So I have given this a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I give it an 8 or 9. Really enjoyed it. Like listening to it again today, just to kind of refresh my memory, it kind of reminded me of kind of like early spring, early summer, like razzing about the Ayrshire countryside, listening to it in my wee work electric car. So I really enjoyed it. The only criticism is maybe more so on Life Logistics, but a few other tracks as well. I do feel as if sometimes the levels don't quite work out as well as they could. And sometimes MC Burnett's vocals are kind of lost a wee bit.
Right, okay.
That would be my only criticism. Like,
fair enough. I don't really have any particular criticisms. It's a solid hip-hop album. It's inventive, it's funny, and it makes you think as well. So,
aye, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's just loads of variety and loads of great songs. So, yeah, really great album. Okay, so that was Standard Patter. It's a great name for an album as well. Standard Patter by Fire Up the Sun.
Jokers to the left and clowns to the right, and no you in the middle to help me with the fight. I'm running on empty and I'm feeling shite. The simplest song is sung the loudest, standing with a hard on and feeling the proudest. Are you listening? Listen! Because you fucking should be. So they call me Dyson cause I suck it up. No in that way, you fucking cheeky cunt. I mean, sort of like putting on a brave face. No one gives a fuck. No one gives a fuck. No one gives a fuck. Versace's out to party like it was 1999. It's 21 years later and I'm still on the fucking white. The beers I drink now have got a bit more flavour, but believe me, I still put in some serious labour. It's the end of the world, boys and girls. Step into the future, leave your pearls. Your expensive shit won't save you now.
Okay, so the second to last album we've got here is the Restless Dreams EP by Gravel. Restless Dreams is, I'm going to say the new EP, but we've got new in inverted commas. I mean, it only came out in beginning of September, so it's not that long ago. So it's from the gothic pop duo Gravel from Livingston. It's spelled Gravelle, but it is pronounced like the dirt, as they say on their social media. Monique Morel provides vocals and synths, while Kyle McNaughton completes the duo with vocals and guitar. So this is another release that was sent to us by Ian at Ravechild. He also sent us the Inkfields album that we reviewed on the last episode way back when. So thanks to Ian for sending this over as well. It was slightly serendipitous at the time because I think it was around June that he sent it to us, and I'd just seen Gravel supporting the Glasgow hardcore band Munich-based, and I fell in love with them there and then. It's goth weirdos playing weirdo goth pop, so what's not to love about that? Quick shout out to Munich-based, who were launching their album Unreal at the Banshee Labyrinth, and I mean they're just a loud as fuck hardcore band. There's a tiny basement stage in Banshee Labyrinth, and they just filled the room with a punishing whirlwind of noise. Even the sound check was heavy as fuck. Like, it was outrageous. And they only played for about 15 minutes, but that was fine for their style of crushing hardcore. And even the guitarist's 12-string couldn't take much more because it was missing half of its strings by the end of their set. So that was a great gig, but it was one that did finally convince me to invest in some proper earplugs because it was fucking loud, but definitely an album to check out for hardcore fans. So Gravel obviously supported Munich-based at that show. This EP is roughly 18 minutes long, so I imagine they played most of it at that gig. I was particularly drawn to their look, which is very dark and very gothic, and they reminded me a bit of the band Zetra, who I saw support Unto Others a few years ago. Zetra I've mentioned a couple of times before, I think, and they're a bit more sort of black metal mixed with pop, whereas Gravel are kind of more goth, industrial, and punk mixed with pop, I suppose. There was, worth mentioning, there was a short film that dropped simultaneously with this, which basically acts like an extended music video for the EP. Very much a grainy horror film with a mysterious videotape, an old CRT TV playing Static in the Woods. There's vampirism, there's sensual scenes on the beach, there's a section where the band are just performing their songs, and it's a really nice companion to the EP and very stylised. What's your thoughts on this then, Grant?
Yeah, I loved it. Like, absolutely loved it. So, and I also had the pleasure of seeing them in the Pint and Punt. So they were supporting Man on Man.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I got to see Gravel and I got to see Clit Drop as well. So Gravel was on first, then it was Clit Drop, then it was Man on Man. So yeah, it was a pretty good night. I watched the video as well as kind of listening to the music, and in the press release they described their sound as a fusion of pounding industrial synths, piercing guitar and dueling vocals. They exist to dominate the audience into emotional catharsis. And I would say that's a pretty apt description for the songs. And watching the film, you definitely get that. The first track, Into the Fog, really hits the ground running with a doom-laden, pulsating synth beat. Their vocals are kind of meshed throughout the course of the song, which makes for some really big and powerful moments, particularly at the kind of 1 minute mark with the introduction of this big, almost orchestral horror organ element, which is really quite unnerving, which when watched alongside the video, especially when you're kind of watching alongside the video rather, the vocals peak about the kind of 2 minute mark, and that vocal refrain of "Don't let it wash me away" is so evocative. It's just, the outro is absolutely crushing. Like, it's just a great first track.
Yeah, it's like this terrifying kind of 80s horror soundtrack by the end of it, isn't it? It's so cool. And I remember being at the gig and seeing the guitarist and thinking that's what Noel Fielding would look like if he were trying to be menacing. And it's like he had that kind of look on his face, like, holy shit.
Aye. Yeah, totally. Like, there's definitely a kind of theatric element to their performance. Yeah. Which, it works well. It worked well in Pint on Bun. I mean, that's a wee kind of basement.
Well, same with Banshee
basement
Labyrinth.
stage.
It's, I don't know how many people you can fit in the room I was in, but there was a bit where he came out into the crowd and sort of stared at everyone, and I was
Whilst playing his guitar.
I was genuinely intimidated. Yeah.
Aye. He was kind of walking about at the. Once he'd finished the gig, he kind of was walking about, and I was a bit like, oh, I don't know how to approach this guy, or whether I should approach this guy. I wasn't too sure. You know what I mean? Because you want to say that was great, by the way, but I wasn't too sure if I could or not. Certainly, Monique Morrill, I remember when she was kind of delivering her vocals, she just kind of stared out into the crowd, and it is quite unnerving. The second track on the EP, Forever, is a foot-stomping banger of a track.
Yeah.
It's, I've kind of written that it's kind of guaranteed to be a floor filler. Kyle's modulated vocals give it a proper alt-rock 80s vibe. The chorus was kind of huge and hooky as fuck. I don't know if you would agree with this. You're obviously a kind of bigger fan of theirs than I was, but for my money, it reminded me of kind of Crystal Castles. Do you agree with that?
There are the next track, Rusted Flowers, reminds me a bit more of Crystal Castles or Alice Glass, but yeah, absolutely. There's definitely Crystal Castles in there, but certainly when I've written that down, it's more for the next track because it's a bit colder, I think. But I agree with you. Like, Forever is an absolute banger. I've written that it's an absolute hit. I think it's just, it's just a really great pop song. Like, it's like, I love the lyrics, like the opening line, "Shake the ice off from my bones, the frost is setting." I just love how goth that is, and like, then you've got that kind of stomping dance beat throughout, and then a huge chorus with the line, "I don't want to live forever, all I want is to be remembered by you." Like, it's just, I don't know, I just love singing along to that. It's so good.
So what was your thoughts on Rusted Flowers, the third track?
So yeah, I just mentioned that it's got kind of these cold synths and overdriven guitars, and that, like I said, it's reminiscent of Crystal Castles or Alice Glass. It really shows off Monique's vocals, and there's a bit of a melody in there reminding me of Linkin Park's in the end, and then towards the final third of it, it just goes full on electronic dance music, and yeah, love the way that track ends. Yeah.
What was your thoughts on Blinded?
So I said Blinded opens like a demented pop song, like a cursed Rick Astley. It's my second mention of Rick Astley.
Second time you've mentioned old Rick Astley.
I think it's because I'd seen
him on
at
the
the
Sainsbury's
time
advert.
No, I'd watched his set at Glastonbury for some reason. I'd been watching some of the stuff from Glastonbury, and I just happened to watch his set live. So I think that must have been on my mind after seeing his set. Because I'm not a fan of Rick Astley, so I don't really know why else I would be kind of bringing him up so often. But anyway, it's got, stabbing punk guitars that come in here and there, which isn't like Rick Astley. Lots of electronics and synths, another great chorus, this time with Kyle singing. Moody, heavy, really great lines, like "I'm blinded by the light, so leave me to decay." Oh, and there's a great sort of Korn-style guitar part in the final third as well.
Yeah. While I Sleep, Morell's vocals are at the kind of forefront of this track. Those kind of wistful vocals reminded me of Jack of Jill. Do you remember them?
No, not really, no.
They were you probably kind of lump them in with like Smashing Pumpkins way back in the day, kind of like 90s, early noughties. I was quite a big fan of them, like Strawberry Gashes, and I think that was like one of their biggest tracks. So, yeah, it reminded me of them. So for that reason, I really enjoyed this.
I got some Evanescence vibes even there.
Yeah, well, they would be the same ilk.
Yeah, and there's a bit of a sort of black gaze kind of aesthetic in there as well. I have said it's probably my least favourite song on the EP, but, you know, it's the least favourite song on a really great EP.
Yeah. With that in mind, man, what did you give it?
I'm basically just fully in love with this band. I love their aesthetic. I love how they fuse alternative music with 80s pop, and the visuals that go along with the album are spot on as well. I've given it a 9 out of 10, but I will say that track 2, Forever, is a 10 out of 10 for me. Just an absolute 10 out of 10 banger.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a flawless track. Absolute flawless track. Yeah, I think 9's a good rating.
Good stuff. Okay, so that was Restless Dreams by forgot what they're called. Gravel. Oh, your EP is 9 out of 10, and I really love your band. I can't remember what you're called. Restless Dreams by Gravel. Here we are. Right, okay, the final album then is...
Nothing Clever, Just Feelings by CLTDRP, which, is it Clip Drip or Clip Drop?
It's Clip Drip. So if you listen to their debut album, Without the Eyes, the first track, it explains that in the first couple of seconds. It says... It's pronounced Clit Drip in like electronic sort of voice, I think. So there's no doubt.
there's no doubt. So in my notes here, I've written due to be released on the 8th of September 2023. It is now the 29th of January 2024, so it's well and truly out. So that was released on Ven Records. So Nothing Clever, Just Feelings, as Sned said there, is the follow-up to the band's critically lauded 2020 debut album, Without the Eyes. The band themselves are a Brighton-based feminist electro-punk trio. In 2022, the band were hailed as one of the most abrasive, inventive new outfits in the UK, which I think is a pretty apt description. The first 2 songs, New Boy and the album's namesake, Nothing Clever, Just Feelings, I've written here, don't necessarily make for easy listening. It's kind of heavy, stuttering industrial electronics coupled with what I've described as almost kind of like staccato vocals. There's a real swagger to the vocals, which I wasn't fully on board with, to be honest. I much preferred them live, to be honest. Really, really enjoyed seeing them live. And since then I've went back to listen to this album, and yeah, it's definitely grown on me.
So I listened to the first album. I wasn't fully on board with it at the time. I do love the song Speak to My from that album. It's fucking excellent. And around the time that came out, I saw them play Bad Pond Festival, which was an online festival because it was still during COVID. And yeah, they were absolutely electrifying. So I can't imagine what it would have been like to actually be in the room seeing them rather than just on a live stream. But as far as this album goes, I think it's great. I think it sounds like The Kills. I think it sounds like Death from Above 1979.
Yeah.
And the Yeah Yeah Yeahs all rolled into one. But I think they make that out of their own, and it's anything but derivative.
Pastiche.
Exactly. It doesn't sound like any one of those bands. I'm just trying to say it's like a fusion of them all, but it sounds very much like its own thing. And It's been so long since I first listened to this. I don't really know whether it was a slow burn or whether it was immediate for me. I honestly can't remember. But at this point, I think it's a fantastic album. Just like, I mean, the first track's got these disjointed electronics, the antagonistic vocals. The pounding chorus has got like a Death from Above, like an early Death from Above bass line through some sort of static filter. There's like a heavy as fuck hardcore beatdown section in the last minute of the song. It's a proper like statement of intent for an opening track. And then like the next track brings in this like pounding clubland beat.
Yeah, there's definitely a dancey element to it.
Yeah, and then it mixes that with like jabbing guitar licks and throbbing distortion. The vocals really draw you in. Like really, the vocals are really stunning in my opinion. Like, I haven't written down tons of lines or lyrics from this album, although I could have and probably should have. But on this song I've written down, I'm learning to manage my distractions. I'm getting better at talking less shit. Which at times borders, I've said here, borders on sounding like Annie Lennox on occasion. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I was thinking when I wrote this down, but I don't know. We'll go with it for now. And then there's another sort of beatdown section at the end of that song, which is a bit more groovy than the sort of punishing end to the previous track. And there's, like a lot of these other albums we've talked about, there's loads of variety. Because the third track, I'm going to call it New Metal Gaze, because it's like...
It's got a floaty, ethereal soundscape to it.
Yeah, but then it's also got like a new metal bounce to it at one point. I've again mentioned Evanescence and their song Bring Me to Life. It's got like a sort of rousing intro that then bursts into this riff heavy chorus, and yeah, it's like an evil industrial version of Bring Me to Life. I'd say there's some similarities with the likes of Brutus, who have that kind of black gaze kind of aesthetic, and that Mrs. Piss album that we covered way back as well.
Fuck aye.
And yeah, that sort of new metal bounce in that guitar riff that's in there. Definitely one of the best songs on the album for me.
Aye. It's funny you mention Evanescence and Annie Lennox, because similar to what you were kind of saying about the other albums, there's loads of stuff in here. I mean, I've picked out like M83 and, you know, one of the songs towards the end of the album. The fourth song, Desire, one on one. I've said that it kind of opens with some pretty kind of menacing electronics. There's the return of those staccato, unnerving vocals that feel confrontational throughout, I think.
Yeah, they definitely do.
Then around the kind of 1 minute mark, it takes on a bit more of a kind of psychobilly vibe with a kind of chugging guitar riff and a kind of rollicking drum beat. But like further down, I can't remember which track it is, but I've said that the song, for whatever reason, just kind of reminded me of Tina Turner's Nutbush City Limits. I don't know what it was. Okay. I don't know if it was like the kind of drum beat or what it was about it, but I was like, what does this remind me of? And I spent fucking ages racking my brains, and that's what I came up with.
I think some of it's probably just got to do with strong female vocals, because totally, you know, you're talking about Annie Lennox, you know, one of the most identifiable vocalists. Evanescence, huge vocals. Tina Turner, obviously huge vocals, you know.
Fuck. The name's just popped out of my head. The Australian punk band that we covered before.
Ammo and the Sniffers?
No,
that one.
There's elements of that in here as well.
Yeah. I think with Ammo and the Sniffers, it's probably that sort of, like you're saying, that's kind of antagonistic. Yeah. The Desire 1-on-1 song, like, I thought it was a bit like a sort of, there's a drum beat in there. I just thought it was a bit like a sort of demented jump rope song. Like, you imagine like goth kids in a schoolyard, like, jumping rope. Like, I know it's not really what we call it in this country, but you know, on the skipping rope, it just had that beat to it. And there was a meme going about, I don't know if you saw it, you know, the Matilda musical that came out, I don't know.
Yeah.
And there's like a meme of like playing metal music over it
when they're running through the school and jumping down. Yeah,
I think this song would just work so well with that. Maybe I'll try and do that and see how it comes out.
That'd be quite good.
But I think that would work amazing. And It's a great song. I think that sort of demented, sort of maniacal beat and chaos to the song is so good. Yeah, there's all these songs are great. I mean, MUTM. This reminds me so much of the Kills. Like, it's got a danceable beat, jagged guitar, buzzing electronics, and it just takes me back to rinsing Kills albums like Keep on Your Mean Side and Midnight Boom. It's a big part of my early 20s, and yeah, it's super weird and super catchy, and it's got an absolutely brilliant, like, clubby kind of instrumental section that would be a proper floor filler, like, really would.
What other kind of songs kind of stuck out for you then, Sneds?
I mean, they're all pretty good. I like Daily Affirmations. I think it's got a really great drum beat. You can just get sucked in by that drum beat regardless of anything else that's happening on that track. And there's some really good sort of Rage Against the Machine-esque guitar moments on there, and like a sort of trance. Like the vocals are delivered like she's in a trance at that point as well, which is really good.
Aye. Because I think, from a kind of lyrical point of view, I can't remember which song it is. It's kind of like in the first opening tracks, I think. It talks about kind of paying for counselling or therapy or something like that.
By selling a guitar pedal, I think. It's like I sold a pedal for therapy or something like that.
And like Daily Affirmations kind of put me in mind of that, and it's like these kind of positive affirmations that are often used within kind of mental health and psychiatry and stuff like that. And I thought it was quite interesting. Like, it's all about kind of like, daily affirmations about making you feel good about yourself. And one of the lyrics that I've kind of picked out is, "I'm better than you, I'm better than everybody," which is almost like the kind of reverse of what kind of positive affirmations are about. But yeah, it's good, man. Yeah.
Yeah, there is a lot of bravado in there
totally.
to be found. I'm a bit. I kind of wish I'd sort of delved into that a bit more and kind of pulled some of those lyrics out, because there's I think there's a lot in there to unpack. That's for sure. All these songs are good. I think I've mentioned my kind of favourite tracks as being, I See My Body Through You and Desire 1-on-1 and MUTM. That kind of 3-track run is really, really great. And then, anything that sounds a bit like the Kills is good for me, like Cake for the Women. That sounds a bit like Kills. The Kills. It's got a nice scuzzy chorus, in-your-face vocals. Probably the heaviest section of any song on the album is the end of that song. Really, 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 really powerful. Where she's just shouting "Cake for the Woman." And I think I mentioned kind of like on track 10, Easier Than This, I've kind of mentioned Puma Rosa. I think that, again, that's just looking at these strong female vocals. There's a bit more Rage Against the Machine elements on the end of that song as well. I quite like how a lot of these songs end up with just these sort of go full throttle right at the end of the song as well.
Yeah. What did you give it?
So I've given this a 9 out of 10 as well. I think it's really great. I mean, there's just so much cool shit on here. I didn't even mention that there's elements of the Gossip and Beth Ditto, I would say, as well in there. That's a big one, actually.
It's funny because I never got that the first time I listened to it. Like I said, I didn't immediately warm to it, but after seeing them live, seeing them perform live, I was bowled over. Like, I was actually quite surprised at how much I enjoyed the live experience. So it made me want to go back and listen to them, and kind of upon, kind of further listening, yeah, I definitely got that kind of Gossip feel.
Yeah. Strange how that kind of seeing a band live can change your perception of an album, like from not really being that bothered by it to sort of, really quite enjoying it.
I loved it. Absolutely loved it. Gravel were amazing, really, really good. But I would almost be leaning more to say that I preferred Clip Drop to Gravel that night.
Yeah,
just that night.
Yeah,
and I don't know if it was just because it was unexpected. You know what I mean? Like, I knew that I was going to enjoy Gravel. Obviously, I knew that I was going to enjoy Man and Man. So yeah, it was quite unexpected. I can't remember the lead singer's name, but she totally owns the stage, you know what I mean, and is a brilliant performer. Just kind of drew everybody in, so I'd be keen to see them again. And I think to get the best out of it would have to be in, a similar sort of venue, just small, sweaty as fuck, dark, damp. And,
Yeah, when I saw that lineup, I was absolutely gutted. Like I couldn't
you were
see
getting,
that.
you were getting.
But I think I was, yeah, exactly. So I can't really
swings it around a bit.
Can't be that gutted.
Swings it around a bit.
Yeah. So what score have you given it?
I've given it a 7, but I would maybe have to go back and review that.
I think the more times you listen to this,
I think I need to take a bit of a deeper dive into.
I was listening to it again on my lunch break today. I just fucking love it. There's a band, an Irish band. Don't ask me if it's Irish or Northern Irish, but they're a band called Mail, which is MHAOL with the H in brackets, but I think it's pronounced Mail, and they've got a kind of similar. They're not exactly the same, but they've got a similar kind of, a similarly antagonistic female vocalist with like a band around her that just make a shit ton of noise. So they're worth checking out as well. But yeah, so that was Nothing Clever, Just Feelings by Clip Drip.
It's just me now. I got a lot of time for forgiveness. Tell me an affirmation. I'm better than this, I'm better than you, I'm better than everybody.
Do you want to mention anything about Man on Man? How was that? Do you want to
Just I was very disappointed I could only stay for like half an hour or something like that. That was it. I was absolutely gutted, to be honest. Absolutely gutted. It was just because of where it is. You know what I mean? It was way up in the kind of back of beyond, up in the West End, and I had to get from there to Kilmarnock on. It wasn't a weeknight, but it was the weekend, and I think like the trains stop at a silly time and the buses stop even earlier. So yeah, but we still saw them play like some of their kind of favourite tracks off their kind of latest album, Provincetown. So I got to see oh Christ, I can't remember the name of it now, that's annoying me. 2 seconds. So it's the fourth track on the album. I was very close to speaking to Roddy Botton, but he came across as quite a grumpy, moody man. I remember because have you been in Pint on Punt?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, it's tiny. It's tiny. So like when we were standing at the bar, there's a wee small kitchen there, and they do kind of like vegan food and stuff like that. I mean, me as well have been in the kitchen. Like I thought I was gonna get dragged in to bloody like become a kitchen porter or something at one point. And we just, because I was there with McInnes, we sat our pints down somewhere, and we were standing in front of the kind of merch table. Had some pretty cool like merch and stuff like that there, but I was skint, so I never bought anything. But Roddy Botton just came over and just like put his hand out like that to the guy that was on the merch stand, and the guy just handed him over. Not a word was exchanged between either of them. But when they were on stage, like they were absolutely loving it and got the crowd jumping. So yeah, I remember them playing Piggy. I remember them playing.
Oh, Piggy! That's they played that when I saw them before, just after the first album came out, and I was like, that's a great song. They
played Haute Couture.
Yeah, I don't know that one.
Oh,
to be fair, I haven't listened to
brilliant.
the second album very much, which is pretty
so
poor from me.
Feelings, and I think I left just in time to watch them play Stoner. So the first track.
Oh yeah.
So I was like, brilliant, got to see that. It's chuffed. But yeah, I need to organise it a bit better if I was ever to see them again. Brilliant venues.
Yeah.
Like I like going because you saw them in stereo, didn't you?
No, it was in Broadcast.
Oh, right.
It's across for the garage, or near enough. Yeah, it's a great wee venue, actually. One of my favourites. Tiny, but really good sound.
It's good. It's just sometimes, yeah. Like when I was speaking to Kerry about it, she was like, you should have known that it should have been, it would be on at like, I think they came on maybe at 10 o'clock or something like that. Like, so I'm assuming they would have played like an hour.
Yeah, it was. It's a bitch sometimes. Like even